Hey everyone, RetroVival here, and it's been a minute. We've got Pokemon Legends EA on the way later this year, and while it looks like a fun return to the Legends formula, it's still not the kind of Pokemon game that I've expected from the home console experience. We've also had a fully dedicated Pokemon Direct recently, and to be perfectly honest, it could have been a bloody email. We've yet to see a Pokemon game fully take advantage of the hardware that they've had for the past 8 years, let alone the Switch 2, and give us an experience on the same level as other franchises in its field. So I've decided to sit down and map out what would be my ideal Pokemon game, from its development to the art style, gameplay mechanics and more. A game that takes the best from the franchise that came before it, takes influences from other games, and just brings Pokemon back to feeling like a premium franchise. You're welcome to share your own ideas or wants for this type of game in the comment section below, but until then, sit down, relax, and let's mock up a dream Pokemon game. So let's start with the basics. The Pokemon Company needs to give Game Freak enough time to make a quality game. They can't rush out their own Breath of the Wild, Xenoblade, Persona or Dragon Quest type game in 1 or 2 years. Next up is the engine. Get a game that will be easier and more efficient for the devs to work with, and one that they can get outside help with if needed. It'd be great to see Nintendo lend Game Freak a hand, with a studio like Monolith Soft helping out with the world design, or maybe even providing their own in-house engines to be used. Nintendo have managed to make some fantastic looking and even performing games on the Switch 1 with their own in-house engines. And while the recent Switch 2 Scarlet and Violet update fixed a lot of issues and actually made the game a lot more enjoyable to play, it still has performance issues along with bugs, camera issues, and just general gameplay problems to its core. While I'm excited for Legends EA, it still looks bloody rough, even on the Switch 2. So I do think some massive changes are needed, and I think a move to a different game engine and some outside support would be such a big help in that direction. This is a simple one, to make it look exactly like the anime. My ideal art style for Pokemon is one that will make me feel like I am playing through an episode of the anime. That's been my goal the whole time with Pokemon. I want to feel like I am playing through the show. I am finally in that series, having my own story. Games like Ni no Kuni, Persona, Dragon Quest XI, Dragon Ball Z, Kakarot, or even a more recent indie game called Europa are all fantastic examples of how beautiful this aesthetic can look in games. Cell shading combined with the brightness and colourfulness that comes with the world of Pokemon would look fantastic. Just go all in on the whole anime aesthetic. Apart from the wild area, revisiting Sword and Shield for this video really made me realise how gorgeous those games really were. The environmental designs for the routes were fantastic and honestly some of the best to date for Pokemon. The game had a warmth and cozy kind of vibe to it, and the locations felt like they really belonged there and looked great. And that all came down to the art style and art direction of its towns and routes. The wild area, not so much. While yes, new locations are always cool to explore, I'm still always holding out hope for an Irish-based Pokemon game, I always will, but I want a returning region. I want them to focus on what we already have, and explore more of the existing lore and regions that they've already established. I'd have no issues at all with anywhere from the previous, more non-recent games I suppose. But for the sake of this video, let's say Johto. Now maybe this opens the door for Kanto post-game, but I think that's pushing it a bit, so let's just focus on Johto. The world of Johto has a rich history and some really beautiful locations that could be reimagined for a more modern and open take on Pokemon. They could really expand the towns and really give you a sense of scale for locations like the Bell Tower. It's got a super solid roster of Pokemon that could always be expanded by the generations following Gen 2. And just because it's a return to Johto doesn't mean we have to return to play as Ethan or Chris from Gold, Silver and Crystal again. I've got no complaints if we do, but I do think Johto's big enough to have some new characters to follow in our old friends' footsteps, with the opportunity for those characters to return maybe as mentors or just regular cameos. So this is the biggest topic, and probably a bit of a controversial one depending on what side of the fence you sit on. I find myself firmly sat on the fence for this one. I don't want a super linear classic game, but I also don't want another Scarlet and Violet type world either. To me, Sword and Shield is the closest we've gotten to this, because it tried to do both linear and open world at the same time, but the wild area was an absolute mess. I think the best route to take is to split the world into handcrafted chunks and then have the usual linear routes connecting them, with some towns and routes being used in one big map, with others being separated into their own smaller ones depending on what they needed. Much like in a traditional Pokemon game, some of the routes could be used to just transition from one area to the other. Some towns or cities could have full sections entirely dedicated to them, making these specific towns or cities that much more expansive. I'd love to see them give a city the depth of a place like Kamurocho in the Yakuza or Like a Dragon series. A place where you could spend hours exploring, doing side quests and activities, maybe entering competitions like in Diamond and Pearl, buildings with actual interiors, shops that are back to being shops again and not just menus. The further you went through the game, the more side content that would become available in these areas. Maybe even people wanting to do different trades would just appear randomly too throughout the game. Then the more linear routes could be used to make some pretty cool looking sequences. When you're approaching different towns or landmarks, you could see them in the distance. It could give you different perspectives on places you've already been to, and at times provide a sense of scale to the world, especially when you're up high. Some of the open sections of the game could have multiple areas to them, with forests, lakes, rivers and oceans, caves, towns and gyms all spread around it. And those gyms could scale depending on which one you did first. For example, you could go for the Zephyr badge or Insect badge first, and then the opposite one would be the stronger of the two after capturing the other badge. Each area would have its own reasons why you couldn't enter it yet either, whether it's badge or story related. Some gyms could take place in more linear sections of the map too, so certain ones will always be your third or fifth gym. The world could still use different techniques to make sections more linear, but you would still have much more freedom travelling around them than in a traditional game. I like the progression of a Pokemon game, and that all comes down to the world design. Breaking the map up into chunks keeps that progression, but you still have the freedom of choice when it comes to some gyms, and that just adds diversity to everyone's playthrough. The Witcher 3 had multiple maps and it's beloved. Yakuza does too, and their maps are as wide as a puddle but as deep as an ocean. There's no shame in dividing the world into separate smaller areas just like in these games. I'd rather a smaller region to explore that's super fleshed out and just really detailed with tons to see and do, and then progress into a new area with all new things to discover. I quite like how Dragon Quest XI does its world too. It's not fully open world, but it has several areas where the game just opens up more. Finding that happy medium for Pokemon is essential. When it comes to gameplay, we need to pull from a bunch of previous entries in the Pokemon series. Keep the roaming Pokemon from the more recent games, it's a great addition, and it really adds to the world. Just make them feel like they actually exist in the world though. Oftentimes it feels like they're just being spawned into the world, and they don't really interact with the world in general. Whereas in a game like Breath of the Wild, deer, boar and so on all feel like they're actually living in that area and have a physical presence in the world. It's hard to describe, but it often just feels like there's a big disconnect between the world and the Pokemon living in it. Have Hoothoots, Pidgeys and more sitting in trees and flying about, Caterpies and Weedles just crawling across logs and up trees, and then Pokemon like Rattata scurrying in and out of burrows. It'd make travelling around the world that much more immersive. Following Pokemon is always just a fun addition too. Let Pikachu or Aipom chill on our shoulder or have Feraligatr running behind us. Next up is battles. They need to be cinematic, especially the gyms in Pokemon League. For this we look not only to the likes of Sword and Shield, but also going back to Battle Revolution on the Wii. I'd love to see commentary return for gym battles on the League. The overall presentation was such a cool part of Battle Revolution, and Sword and Shield is the closest we've really gotten to it in recent years. I'd love for it to cut to the crowd after we get to a certain point during a gym or Pokemon League battle, and we see our allies cheering us on. Maybe it cuts to a Pokemon Center and our rival is watching the battle on TV, the professor is watching it in his lab, and maybe they have a bit of dialogue. Just bringing the narrative into the gym battles in Elite Four would be a great addition. Other than battles, we need to bring back the freedom of Legends Arceus by incorporating its Pokemon catching into the game. Let us sneak up and throw a Pokeball if we think we can catch a Pokemon off guard, and let the Pokemon aggro on us too if they're not the type to run away. That added so much to Legends Arceus, and it was sorely missed in Scarlet and Violet. You can imagine sneaking up on a Weedle or Kakuna only to either fail to catch it or miss entirely, and then you get jumped by a Beedrill in response. I kinda want them to bring back trainers seeing you and running after you to fight again. I don't know why. I know it was maybe inconvenient at times, but when I was playing Scarlet and Violet I did find that I missed that quite a bit. And I think it'd be cool that after every gym badge you earn you can re-challenge previously fought trainers, but now they've caught, leveled up and evolved more Pokemon in the meantime. Re-challenging gym leaders is a must too, and I'd actually love if you could get different grade gym badges too. Maybe there could be 8 grades technically for the 8 badges. So for example, the final gym leader you fight is the highest grade. The first gym leader you fight is the first grade. Each grade you challenge can be re-challenged for fun too. so you can always go back to an old gym and choose to either fight them as their default first battle, all the way to full teams and high levels. I don't know, it just seems like a fun idea. This is a pretty simple one. Give us 3 difficulty options: Trainer, Leader, Master. Trainer is a difficulty more in line with the more recent games, with EXP share for all your party and so on. Trainers and wild battles are much more forgiving, and your rival chooses a starter weaker to yours. Leader is the more traditional Pokemon experience. EXP share is an item you can acquire for use on one Pokemon only, like in older games. With trainers and wild battles, that'll put up a challenge at times, along with the rival choosing the starter with the advantage over yours instead. And this applies to Master Mode too. Master Mode is Pokemon for Bloody Souls fans. Tough trainers and wild Pokemon, less money per battle, and while you still get the EXP share item, you gain less XP in general. It's the more grindy and unforgiving option compared to the other 2 modes, and it's only recommended for experienced players. The online is spread across all 3 difficulties. Skill-based matchmaking would be great, with maybe the different difficulties being used as a way to match people with more similarly experienced players for quick matches. Let us rank up and earn special unlocks, maybe stuff like designs for Pokeballs, clothes, player card backgrounds, packs of items like heals and Pokeballs and so on. Basically what bloody Call of Duty and Halo used to do before Battle Passes ruined everything. A cool incentive for playing multiplayer and leveling up your account without the microtransactions. Being able to have a buddy join your game and travel around with you would be cool, but only if they could make it work well, and one way I think that they could do that is the Safari Zone. The Safari Zone could be randomized each time you enter. There could be woodland areas, plains, mountains, caves, swamps, deserts, and seaside areas, but it would just randomly pick which ones you got to do each time. It would allow you and up to 3 friends to explore it together or each go your own way. Depending on what games the people in the game had, it would determine what Pokemon appear too. So if you both had the opposite version, there's a chance you could encounter the other game's exclusive Pokemon. A fun way to kind of incorporate playing with people who own the opposite version, without it just being trading. Our final topic here is the story. Pokemon has kind of increasingly gotten lighter and lighter with its story, almost to a kind of intelligence insulting level at times. And I'd really love for a game where the story does take center stage again. You have your rival and your friends too, and that rival is actually a good challenge to battle, and someone who actually wants to defeat you. Not for the fun of battle, but just because they want to be the best. A story that keeps your attention throughout, with optional side stories as I mentioned before, scattered throughout the world. Antagonists who are actually proper villains, not just some bloody punk rockers or some poor bullied kids from your school. Give us a proper group of bad guys. If you want some nostalgia bit, maybe even bring back Team Rocket or Team Galactic in some capacity, and then have like a group of proper antagonists that you'll meet in battle throughout the game. I loved Team Galactic for this exact reason. You had their leader Cyrus, his commanders, and the grunts. Give the antagonists a proper end goal, and have you, your friends and rival, maybe even the gym leaders and Pokemon League members all play a part in the storyline. You spend the whole game having friction with your rival, building 2 absolute monsters of teams, only for the 2 of you to have to unite and fight a common enemy. Give the Pokemon games back their gravitas. I'd love like an endgame battle. Throw in some cameos here and there for longtime fans, maybe Red, Blue and Green, Ethan, Chris, Professor Oak, maybe even characters from Hoenn, Sinnoh or later. It'd be great to see Pokemon deliver an absolute 10 out of 10 game for the Switch too. And what would really assist it even more is if the games finally got voice acting. It doesn't have to be every single line of dialogue, just do what Persona and Yakuza do. They say all the important stuff, and then for the random bits of dialogue you get a phrase or a grunt with the text box displaying what they're saying. It just adds a lot more to the games. Pokemon is such a big franchise that makes so much bloody money, and the games really need to start reflecting that in their quality. Take more time to make them, and release spin-offs, collections, remasters or remakes in between. A new mystery dungeon, Pokken tournament, or even a new take on Ranger would be cool additions to the Switch too. Collections of the old Game Boy and GBA games would be fantastic. Maybe even spruced up versions of DS or 3DS games too. I'd absolutely love some HD 2D remakes of Pokemon games. Just some stuff to bridge the gap between the main series games, so Game Freak can give it the time it needs to be perfect. There's no excuses anymore. The Pokemon Company has the funds, they have the hardware now, and the resources to make an amazing game, and it's about bloody time they do. So there you have it. That is my perfect Pokemon game, my dream Pokemon game, one that will probably most definitely never happen. But I can dream. Remember to share your own in the comment section below. Thanks so much for joining me on this one, it's been on my mind for a while now, so it's great to finally get to it. Thanks so much for watching guys, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.